Aloha. Welcome to American Issues Take One. I'm Tim Apicella, your host. Today's title is Trump's Waco, Texas rally. Lots of whining and January 6 echoes. Trump kicked off his big gala event in Waco, Texas this week. And not to be disappointed, it was shades of 2016, 2020, a lot of grievance, a lot of whining. But this time it seemed a lot darker than his campaigns of the past. And how dark was that? Bottom line was, we heard a lot of stochastic speech, which is to say, trying to gin up his base and prepare them potentially for a violent outcome, perhaps in his response to pending indictments. But nevertheless, there were lots of overtures about the deep state, our current state of government, and how they're coming for them. So to discuss that with my panel, we'll be right back. With me, we have our special esteemed guest, Chuck Crumpton, and our our Think Tech Hawaii contributor, Cynthia Lee Sinclair. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Tim?
So I'm hoping that some of you saw portions of Donald Trump's big rally in Waco, Texas. First question to you, Chuck, is do you think there was any coincidence whatsoever that this big rally, Trump's really first big 2024 kickoff rally for President of the United States, was any coincidence that it was held on the 30th anniversary of the Branch Davidian fire and disaster and death event that took place?
Yeah, there are no coincidences. Whoever said that was right. He knew it was brought up well ahead of time, and it's whatever. But the other thing is, in terms of watching it, I never watched Trump. If there's one thing that Trump should be on our media, in a single word, I would say ignored.
Well, let me take issue to that. I mean, isn't it a great way to learn about the principles and the implementation of propaganda?
Well,
isn't it a classroom unto itself every time you watch them at the podium of propaganda?
Well, if harakiri is a good way to learn about circulation and blood flow, then I would agree that you're right. It's a good way.
I knew I could depend on you, Chuck. I knew it. Perfect analogy, and I appreciate it.
Give me a straight line every time.
Yeah, every time I can depend on you. It's great. Wonderful. Hey, well, so what's the significance? If there is no coincidence, what is he trying to gin up? Or is he trying to gin up something with his 30% base? It seems like he's not appealing to the non-MAGA GOP. Doesn't seem like he's trying to appeal to the independents. Doesn't care about the Democrats, of course. So, I mean, is he trying to reinvigorate that loyal following of MAGA followers? Is he insecure that maybe they're not 100% behind him and he's got to corral them once again?
Look, Trump's a one-trick pony. Always has been, always will be. The worst thing that has ever happened to this country or the world in general is it worked for him once in 2016.
Okay.
I don't know what that says about the rest of us.
Well, okay, that's an important point. I mean, that comes to the discussion of today's show is it did work in the past. And the question is, and we'll get into the details of what he said during this rally, but I guess the operative question is it going to work in 2024? And if it does, why? And if it doesn't, why do you think it won't?
Well, look, it didn't work in 2020. It didn't work in 2022. Hey, if you're a baseball coach, this is not the guy that you want to put on the mound in the ninth inning with the bases loaded and 2 outs. You want somebody who can put out the fire, not fan it.
So what I hear you saying is that he's a one-trick pony, and people are done with it. They want to move on. Is that accurate?
Well, just enough people are done with it that he's not able to get what he wants. And so far, since the 2020 elections, pretty hard to think of an instance where he did get what he wants. Out of Congress, out of the courts, out of anybody.
So, Cynthia,
Even
if you're part of the non-MAGA GOP and you want to see your candidate, whoever that may be at this point, but if you want to see your candidate win the nomination and win the presidency for 2024, I mean, when you see Donald Trump with his numbers, yet he's in the same one-trick pony format of his sarcastic speech of doom and gloom and Armageddon, so to speak, what's your reaction? I mean, are you going to try to head that off? You're going down the road and you see the bridge is out, bridge isn't there, yet you keep traveling down the road. Where's the strategy here, in your opinion?
To stay out of jail. I honestly believe that's why he's doing this, is because he thinks it's going to get him support from some of his followers right now. If you're the GOP that's not in his camp, like the people he was talking about in his rally, and he, lumps in with Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden, he puts Mitch McConnell there too.
Mm-hmm.
Mitch McConnell,
yes,
richest man in America, or used to be anyway, right? For a very long time, the head of the normal sort of GOP, and now that's Trump's enemy. He called him out by name at the Waco thing and everything. You know what struck me was his overinflating his crowd size again, as usual. And I loved what Jimmy Kimmel, all the night, hosts kind of made fun of his whole rally down there. But when Jimmy Kimmel goes, 50,000 people, well, I'd say you were short by about 47,000. It's like, he obviously tripled the size of what it really was. And that's just, he is like Chuck says, this one-trick pony who just sort of keeps repeating the same things over.
Well, it's that one-trick pony that scares me, and that is, and I'll go through some of the quotes here in a minute, but that language definitely incited a riot on January 6th. And if you really listen to what he said during this Waco rally, boy, it sounded like stereophonic music once again. The same words, the same dark tones, and this implied whipping up emotions to protect the great Donald Trump. And I don't know if it was me that caught that. I think a lot of folks did catch that. What did you think, Cynthia?
I got the exact same thing over and over and over. Poor me. Look at how, witch hunt. It's a witch hunt. It's a witch hunt. And even on the back of every card said, it's a witch hunt.
Yeah, it said witch hunt, didn't it?
Witch hunt. And that has been his cry from the beginning with the Mueller probe. And
right.
all.
Well, I mean, at what point does that kind of lose its luster? At what point does that become just old and stale? But yet he uses it. So presumably he's getting some advice, or is this just Donald Trump alone putting all the dots and crossing the T's on his campaign?
I think it is him himself. And even if he has advice, he doesn't take it. If he doesn't want it, he doesn't take it.
Okay.
Trump is all Trump. He's too selfish and arrogant to go by what anybody else says. So it's all him. We can accredit all of it to him, which is why some of it is so glaringly stupid. You just think, how can anyone be that stupid to say something like that? And I know we're going to talk about the Hannity interview in a little bit, and that's where his stupidity is glaringly present. So, yeah.
Once again. All right. So, Chuck, let me get a reaction from you here. I'm going to read something he said at the Waco rally, and it goes something like this. He's talking about the final battle in 2024, and there will be justice. He also said, they're not coming after me, they're coming after you. He is the only one in between them and you. What's he referring to?
I mean, if we step back, you're right, Cynthia's right. Trump is eminently predictable. What he does, what he says, is always, I mean, not even a variant on the same thing. He's got one strategy, and that's fear. He's got a lot of arrows in that fear quiver, lying, hyperbole, all kinds of stuff, right? And none of them in any way related to truth, none of them in any way related to benefit to the country or the majority of the people or the people who really need the benefits the most. None of that stuff. He doesn't care about that stuff. Because if anyone expects Trump to have any vocabulary or tone other than fear, vitriol, anger, there's no reason to expect that. He cannot possibly gain the support of calm thinking, reasonable, rational people when they're being that way. He knows that. Or he instinctively guesses that. Whatever it is, he doesn't even reach for that. I can't remember a single occasion on which Trump has ever said or done anything that would appeal to a calm, rational, critically thinking mind.
Well, if Donald Trump is not living on the planet rational, where is he living? Because doesn't an election take numbers to win, A, the nomination, and B, actually win the general election? If he's appealing to this sarcastic speech and this deep, dark fear mongering, and they're coming for you, and they're, the deep state is out to get us, does that go beyond 33%?
The question is, will he need it to? All he needs, as Brad Raffensperger in Georgia will tell you, is enough to be able to manipulate into a win. He doesn't need to score more points. He doesn't need to get more votes. He's never gotten more votes. He has never come anywhere close to winning a popular election.
But he doesn't need to in an electoral college environment.
Right. So now what he's proposing and what he was proposing in 2020 is, I don't even need to win according to the Constitution or the Electoral College. I can get my people to manipulate it so that I win despite that.
Well, where I come from, that's called a long shot. Maybe that's just me.
You would think, right? But
Cynthia, are you concerned that, I'll read another one here. Hang on, before I ask you the question.
Okay, let me say real quick while I look it up, because it's not called a long shot, it's called cheating. Sorry. I had to
duly noted. Good point. He said the following: the real threat to the United States is not China or Russia, but it's the top leadership in America: Mitch McConnell, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi. So, like in all good propaganda, it looks like he's creating what is called a straw man. Someone you can deflect all the problems and ills of the country to certain individuals. In this case, he's labeling as the deep state. Are you concerned that many of his followers, his MAGA followers, may resort at all to a violent outcome, either at future rallies or other events that are symbolic of government?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't bet unless I know it's a sure thing. And I will bet money that there will be violence. He's already...
What form might that look like? I mean, another January 6th Capitol attack or something, a knock on the door to Mr. Pelosi?
Well, I don't think that would happen. Mr. Pelosi's already done his part for them, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, something similar, of course, but...
It's bigger scale now. I don't think it's going to be any kind of individual attacks. I think it's going to be on a big scale. It's going to be voting centers. It's going to be tabulation centers. It's going to be places like that just sort of began, but weren't formed enough to make a difference. But if they're planned ahead of time, boy, they'll make a big difference. And then you've got to take into account all of the the Republican legislatures, and I'm sorry, it gets me all, because this is the part that terrifies me. We have so many Republican legislatures that have already passed bills that give them the power to decide who wins and who doesn't, who the electors are and who they aren't. And so it doesn't matter what the voters say if the legislatures can take it away from that state.
Well, did the Supreme Court more or less punt on that case in North Carolina?
Not really. That was a whole kind of a different case, right? That case was, will we absolutely straight up across the board nationally give legislatures that kind of power? These are state bills that have gone through the houses and passed and been signed by the governor. So they don't need that federal cover. They've already got the state cover. And so I think it was scary that the Supreme Court might take that on and give them that absolute cover that nobody can fight. But this way, there's still an opening to try to fight against it. But nobody's filing any kind of lawsuits against it. I haven't heard really about any lawsuits going through the courts for that. And so that means the legislatures can do what they want in each state.
Well, remember also, Tim, the North Carolina case, Moore versus Harper, the Supreme remanded it after the election of Supreme Court justices in North Carolina changed the majority from more progressive or even-handed to a solid, more right-wing conservative majority. So they sent it back for those guys to fix it so they wouldn't have to.
Mm-hmm. All right, good point.
They basically gave the Republicans two bites at the apple, one with a newly very conservative right-wing North Carolina Supreme Court, and another with them if that doesn't work.
Right. Good point. Chuck, do you share any concerns that Cynthia's spoken to as far as a potential violent outcome in the future with the MAGA base?
I think that's a great question. And the question really is going to be, much as Trump would love to see that, if he loses, the next best thing for a loser is to see your followers rise up and sacrifice themselves in violent.
Well, I don't see it as him losing. I see him as him doing this before an election is held, to prime the pump, so to speak. That's where I think if there is an occasion for violence, it would be well before an election. And I guess the question is if I'm just being overly concerned, paranoid, or the combination thereof. What do you think?
No, as I say, that's a great question, because if it happens before the election, look at the people that is most likely to influence and galvanize. The people who are not comfortable with violent intervention into political decisions. That's probably a majority of independents. That's certainly a majority of young voters. Those two groups have already shown in 2020 and in 2022 especially that they are not followers of this violent, fear-based overthrow mentality that he's above the rule of law. He is the evangelical savior. He is, as he put it in Waco, the most innocent person in American history.
Yes, he did. He did say that. Okay. I think I have a good sense of that. Let me ask you this, because Donald Trump did it for a second time. So the first time wasn't by accident. It wasn't by, just a campaign manager thinking this might be a whimsical idea. But he had, once again, the beginning of his rally, him pledging the allegiance. And then in the background, you had the prisoners that have been convicted of January 6th crimes of insurrection, sedition, and or just unlawful trespassing or interruption of government trying to do its business. A chorus of prisoners convicted singing the national anthem. Now, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I'm kind of disgusted that we had a former president of the United States, whether I liked him or not, but basically putting his arms and embracing those that are convicted of such things and saying, I will raise you up. I will support you. I will pardon you if I become president again in 2024. What are we to think about that, Chuck?
Remember, John Wilkes Booth, immediately after assassinating President Lincoln, the three words in Latin, sic semper tyrannis, ever thus to tyrants. Yeah, you can say that stuff. You can sing that stuff. You can mouth that stuff.
You know, it's funny you should mention that, because in Booth's own mind, he really thought he was doing what everyone in the South wanted done. And lo and behold, did he find out that he was castigated a horrible criminal. And so he was surprised that he wasn't getting the fame before he was captured. He lived long enough to find out that he really wasn't in favor from his own Southerners on the assassination of Lincoln. Is Trump delusional? Well, I think we know the answer to that, but is he delusional enough to think that by embracing the convicted of January 6th, that he somehow is the hero of America? That's a rhetorical question, I know, but
not necessarily. If you took a vote of all the Southern slave owners, who are most of the voters, because they made sure nobody else would get to vote, right? If you're a white property owner, including slaves, you get to vote. If you're not, you don't. That's the way it worked. If you took a vote at that point, would they get that 33 or 40%? Probably at least, maybe more, maybe even a majority. Is that really different than what Trump's doing now? Ethically, morally, qualitatively, maybe not. But we are in a different place in terms of communications, awarenesses. One of the reasons that the Republicans have to attack our educational system is they're right. It's one of their worst enemies. Critically thinking, educated people are very lopsidedly not Republican. It's a fact of life. What does that tell you?
What does it tell us?
Well, one thing it tells me is, I think Cynthia is right. You can listen to Trump and say, how stupid is this guy? But the real question is, how stupid are that 33 to 40% who are saying he hasn't, 29% say he didn't commit any crime. 49 or 20-something percent, 49% say, yeah, he did. And 26% say, well, maybe not a crime, but certainly ethical violation. So 75% said he was either criminal or unethical.
Right.
Does that mean there's only 25% Republicans out there? I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a good way of to summarize that discussion. Good point.
But you can't
Cynthia,
rule out that part of people's awareness. You cannot presume that they will have no moral awareness. Trump does, because he's amoral.
Well, I keep bumping up against
walk on the street and kill people and get away with it.
I keep bumping up against rational thought, and that is, if it didn't work in 2022, if a lot of the Republicans or the younger voters of this country said, bringing in these election deniers as candidates is a bridge too far, and the red tsunami didn't happen as a direct result of these extremist candidates with election denialism on their on the tip of their tongues, speaking every minute of it, and it didn't work. So I guess I just go back to the numbers question. How does Donald Trump win an election either by the Electoral College or not, when his numbers are only at 25%.
He cheats. He's gonna cheat. That's how. Can I say something really quick before we get
Of course, because I was going to go to you.
Okay. That one of the things that I wanted to say before, when you had asked me about the connection and why Waco and why the 30th anniversary and why, because that is still a popular thing among all of the right-wing militia guys, you know, the Proud Boys and the One Percenters and all those guys. They really believe that the Branch Davidian guys were the victims, right? And so it's been one of their rallying cries is to stand up for those guys. So it was the loudest dog whistle, I think, that Trump has put out in a lot of years. And I meant to say that earlier.
Well, can we just say it's a bullhorn? I mean, how subtle does it need to be? I mean, it's pretty obvious to me, but yeah.
But some people don't see that at all. And Fox News, of course, you know, although Fox News was...
We're not allowed to say news after the word Fox because there is no news.
Yeah, it's just a habit, right?
Fox Entertainment, I don't care, Cynthia, but news is not allowed on my show.
Fox lies are out there.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Okay, they're kind of what I heard on Fox News. Sorry, lies a little bit there. I almost said it again. They were talking about how Trump was dissing Ron DeSantis and, you know, Ron DeSanctimonious and all of his, you know, nicknames that he's got for him. And Fox, I almost said it again. And
see?
And Fox was talking about how it's not fair that he says those things about him. And because you know how he was saying all these things about how Trump was saying, he was crying to me, saying, I never would have been governor. I'll never win if you don't endorse me, and going on this when he was out there at the rally. And so Fox was kind of trying to, I guess, stand behind Ron DeSantis, which I thought was really surprising, since Trump is usually their guy, you know, to stand in opposition to him.
Well, that might be a directive from Murdoch himself down to the Fox News host. Oh, I did it. The Fox hosts. I almost said news host.
You did.
I did say it. Okay, I'm guilty. Okay, we're out of time, but before we go around the table for last thoughts, Cynthia, what was your impression of, yet again, the convicted prisoners singing the national anthem simultaneously as Donald Trump pledged allegiance to the flag?
It made me sick to my stomach, literally, not just like figuratively, oh, I hated it. I literally got this pit in the depth of my stomach, and I felt I was gonna throw up. It just made me sick to see some people who had disgraced and disrespected our capital and everything that America stands for, to stand in there and be celebrated.
Are we already desensitized in 2020 for the 2024, desensitized to the point where there's not enough outrage for witnessing this yet again? Are we to that point so early in the 2024 campaign that we're desensitized that this isn't an outrageous behavior?
I don't know as I believe that it's a desensitized, although that is in there, but I think it's that people are so sick of all of it. They just have
sick of it, apathy versus desensitized. Okay, I got that.
I think it's more like apathy. And it's not just apathy, because apathy means you just don't care. They care. They just literally can't tolerate it anymore emotionally. It's so...
Can we afford to be distant from our concerns?
No, they need to wake up and say, get tough. Come on.
Okay.
Every day when I train I shouldn't say train. When I do an investigation into some of the stuff we're going to be talking about and all of that. And there are days where I have to say, I can't. I got to take a break, right? And I don't watch news on the weekends, Fox or otherwise, right? I don't watch any news on the weekends because I got to take a break because we're always in it like this. And
well, this is round 3. I mean, we've been at this for 5+ years,
Remember
6
Trump?
years.
Yeah.
When do we get a break to talk about, someone on the scene other than, Donald Trump?
Changed the name of the show even so we wouldn't have to talk about him anymore.
We did. This used to be called Trump Week. All right.
Hoping he would go away, but he didn't. And I think people are just desensitized, yes, but more so overwhelmed and sick of it.
Overwhelmed.
Don't want any more of it. They can't literally take it anymore because it makes them with such high anxiety. And you talk about the Trump derangement syndrome that, people have claimed on the right that it's, something wrong with people, that they're going after Trump, where in reality, the way that phrase started was for people that are just overwhelmed and so beyond sick of what he does that they can't take it anymore. They don't even want to hear his name or talk about any of it.
Well,
and that's
vigilance. Vigilance is the success for democracy.
Absolutely.
And it's I forget. I think that was Ben Franklin's quotation. Can't remember his quotation, but vigilance is the word. Whether we're tired and sick of it or not, here we go for round 3. So, we have to re-energize. Chuck, your last thoughts?
Sorry.
Well, 2 points. First, as I say, I never watch Trump. I intentionally avoid him. If that video clip of the January 6th prisoners, criminals, and Trump came on, I would immediately switch to Johnny Cash at Folsom Prison. Much better, more entertaining, more honest, sincere, and more moving.
But that was the #1 hit on Twitter.
Right. But the second thing, which is going to turn out to be really important, let's see who the GOP chooses and what they choose. Is it going to be a culture war with DeSantis, or is it going to be a all-out war with Trump? Trump's got the money. So right now he's in the driver's seat.
Chris Christie is raising his head up. We'll see if Chris Christie enters the fold. That might be interesting. That might be a palatable selection for a lot of people.
What?
Well, never raise your head up if it's on the guillotine.
I couldn't have said it any better myself. Okay, Chuck, thank you. Cynthia, what are your last thoughts on this topic? And
my last thoughts are people get tough. We got to get tough. We don't want to hear it. We don't like it, but sometimes, that's life. You don't always get what you want. You can't always do what you want. Sometimes you have to do what's right. And unfortunately, putting our heads in the sand right now is the worst thing that we could ever do for our country, because while we're not looking, it's going to get stolen by a fascist wannabe dictator. And we have to be very careful. And a bunch of, power hungry rich people that want to go on his coattails, and we'll cover for him. So we have to be careful. And so I'm going to end with a quote that just is the biggest lie you ever heard come out of Trump. And here it is. And it was said at the rally. I think they've already dropped the case. It's a fake case. Some fake cases, they have absolutely nothing.
There you hear it.
We got lots.
Cynthia, I appreciate your last thoughts about getting energized, getting refocused, and recognizing a fascist when we see one. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Chuck, thank you for your thoughts and trying to instill some calmness in the marketplace of ideas as we move forward in the 2024 presidential campaign. It's nice to have someone that could keep us on even keel so that we can endure that which we're going to see in the near future.
Well, and I think Alvin Bragg is a wonderful example of exactly what Cynthia just talked about. Stand up, speak up, speak up.
Great points. All right. Thank you both for sharing your thoughts and your time today. I'm Tim Apicella for American Issues Take One. Won't you join us next week? And until then, aloha.
Thank you so much for watching Think Tech Hawaii. If you like what we do, please like us and click the subscribe button on YouTube and the follow button on Vimeo. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and donate to us at thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo.